And that is selling the new Aldelo KDS. We've had a KDS and a Aldelo Express since the conception. It was one of the early on features that we had, and it had not ever gone through a refresh. We've kept the same feature set all along, but we were always improving Aldelo Express. Express point of sale outgrew the KDS, where we had a mismatch of features, things that we would do in Express that we did not have the ability to work with on the KDS. Well, now they're more in a parity situation. We've now taken and improved that. Some of the basics, though, are still the same. It still uses iPads, and most often we recommend the iPad mini as a bump bar. So that small device would be your bump bar. And then we recommend to connect that to a larger monitor through an HDMI cable. Really simple to do. It's just use the right adapter. This is the one that you should be looking for. This is an HDMI USB-C on one side and a USB-C on the other. You can get this in the $20 to $30 range. So it's not an expensive proposition, but it will allow you to connect both the HDMI and the power cable to the iPad in order for it to run. And what you see on the iPad screen is then projected up to the bigger monitor. What that bigger monitor is, doesn't matter, doesn't care. As long as it has an HDMI input, you're good, you're golden, you can do it. So whatever you see on the iPad, it's going to be displayed same up on the monitor. This then allows you to then use that bump bar, use the iPad as a bump bar, makes it really simple. So this is the key to doing that. With this little connector right here and the right cable, you're good. So more basics. QSR has been the normal adopter of kitchen video. We're going to expand that now with TSR. It's been slower in the TSR, table service realm. It's been a lot slower for adoption. We think we're going to have some changes to that. We think we're going to make it an advantage for a table service restaurant to have screens versus printers. Now, you may need more screens, but that's a lot cheaper alternative than it is to have large printers. You do have, with the new features, a dynamic screen layout, and that means that the blocks and text they're adjusting to the size of the order. So a small order is a small block. A large QSR or TSR order is now going to expand the block to take up the entire all the items. No more do you have to scroll up and down to see the entire order. A larger order now is displayed all at once in one block. There are 3 text sizes, so you need to have expanded, larger print text. You now have 3 options for text in the size that it's going to display. There are 2 operation modes. There's the line cook and the expediter. The expediter will not run without a line cook, so you have to have the line cook monitor in order to bump things from it to then appear on the expediter. So the expediter mode has to have a line cook somewhere in the system for it to then consolidate and put all the items in one place for the expediter to tray the food. Line cook monitors, you can have, well, you can have still up to have 20 monitors in the system. So if you had one expediter, that means you could have 19 line cooks. That's quite a bit. That's a big system. So you could do that, not a problem. There are 2 display modes within the line cook display. One is what's called checks view. That's what you're seeing on the screen now. A consolidated view is a line by line consolidation of all the multiple products or multiple items that you would have to be prepared at that station. Because remember, now you're putting one of these per prep station, one per prep area. So take a look at both, let your customer look at both, see which one they think is better. And it's really easy to switch back and forth. It's a matter of going to that monitor or to that iPad, going into the setup and just flipping the switch, and it changes from one to the next. Let your customer make a determination what's best for them. We can accommodate either one. So line cook expediter are the two modes. Display options are check view and consolidated view. So some of the features that we had to bring into parity, one of which was the coursing. That coursing's been out for a few months. That's been well received. It was a feature that we were obviously lacking in, but it's one that gives you an advantage over other point of sale systems. Most don't have coursing. And then really most tablet systems don't have coursing. We have up to 10 courses in our system. Now our kitchen video will work with that. It handles that flow very well. Of course, the first or the starter course is automatically fired to the kitchen, and additional courses are held under the Futures tab. You'll see that here when we do the demonstration software. But the Futures tab is where we hold the items that have a hold time longer than 10 minutes. And those do include the coursing, the hold and fire, sorry, the coursing items. So coursing item, hold and fire over 10 minutes, those are put under a tab called Futures. Hold and fire is now supported. These are items that are either held, if they're under a 10-minute hold, it goes into a prep tab. If they're longer than 10 minutes, they go into the Futures tab. Now I'm saying 10 minutes, but there's an adjustment for that in the setup if you wish. Show items and fire. We show the time and how long it is before that item is fired. You'll see on the screen in the yellow bar, it says prep only. So what we're doing is giving the kitchen notice, here's an item that's going to come up, shows the time that it's going to be sent to fire, to prepare. So now they can gather the materials they need to make that item. It's not something that they have to be shocked about when the fire appears on the screen. They have time now to pre-prep items because they're in the prep screen. Okay. Now we allow the kitchen to gather and prep the items before they're sent to the fire, and that's what this is talking about. We also now handle sub modifiers. That is where you can modify a modifier. So we do that now by allowing an indentation of the sub modifier. So you have the item indented by a modifier, then the modified modifier appears even more indented. So those do appear now on the screen. They're indented simply below the modifier. So let's go ahead and pause and take a look at how we first set up a KDS, how easy that is. Go into the settings on that KDS, which now have new features, new settings, and then run through a simple transaction that will show you the Future tab, the Prep tab, the Recall tab, and then the Fire tab. So hang on a second, let me cue that up.
Right, so for the KDS setup, we're going to start on the cloud first because there are certain settings that do have to be enabled in order for the KDS to be set up on your devices. So we're going to go into these settings and we're going to go into the device config, and you'll see the devices that have Express registered on them. I'm going to be working with device number 1 here, and you'll see it is an Android device. And that shows that the KDS does support cross-platform integration, meaning I can set up an Express device on an Android and connect to the KDS, which is only run on an iPad device. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the device number there, and we're going to go into the peripherals. And you'll see at the bottom there is a KDS integration section. I want to expand that and turn on the KDS integration. So we'll enable that. So what this does allow is for the kitchen display button to be present in the hardware setup on your Express device, and in this case, device number 1. Now, if we also had physical kitchen printers enabled, we can suppress a print that is going to the kitchen printer, or if you want to have both jobs printed to the kitchen printer as well as the KDS, we can disable the suppress and it will send the jobs to both devices. We'll go ahead and leave it as is and save. So if the restaurant will only be setting up one KDS, enabling the kitchen display integration is really the only step needed, because by default, items will be routed to KDS number one. And when registering the device, it will just need to be registered as KDS number one. So we're going to go into the setup here for the products and go to the item setup. I'm just going to pull up a random item here and get into the printing options. So you'll see that this is defaulted to KDS number one here. So if the store will have multiple prep stations, like your pizza station or your grilling station, and let's say your grilling station was KDS number two, I can reroute and send this to the appropriate KDS. And also if the restaurant will be using a line cook and expediter setup, the item will need to be routed to both the desired line cook device and expediter device. Let's say my line cook is KDS number one and my expediter is KDS number two. I would just have to enable both KDS devices here and save. And we're going to go ahead and move over to my KDS device here. All right, so we are on the iPad here with KDS. So when first downloading from the App Store, you will have to register the KDS. And there's a couple ways to activate. You see that there is the fast activate and manual activate. With the manual, you can log in with your login credentials for your store, or you can simply use the fast activate where you use the Aldelo Express application, pull up the scan app QR option, which pulls up the camera and scan that QR code. We'll go ahead and do that with my Express device here. I'll pull up the camera and scan that QR code. And once it's scanned, it moves over to the next step in the registration where we define a device number. I'll go ahead and set this as device 101 and define it as kitchen display number one here. And you can see that there was up to 20 KDS you can set up there. We'll go ahead and activate. And the KDS is registered. So we're going to go and move back to the Express device to complete the connection here. So we are now on our Aldelo Express device on the Android tablet. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the setup menu. And this is where you would actually pull up the scan app QR option to pull up the camera to scan the QR code to register the device there. But we're going to go into the hardware section next. And again, because we did enable the kitchen display integration on device number one, this kitchen display button is present. If I left it as disabled, that button would not be present. So we'll go into our kitchen displays, and you will see kitchen display one there. And we can toggle this over to connected. If I wanted to test the connection, I can tap on test. Now we'll move it over to our kitchen display to show the response on the KDS device there. So again, when I hit the test button on the Express device, this will be the response on the KDS, letting you know that the connection is successful. All right, so now that we're connected, we're going to go into the device setup here. So we're going to tap on the screen with 3 fingers. Alternatively, we can tap on the settings cog on the upper right-hand corner, and we'll enter our manager code. It'll take us into the settings here. All right, so the first setting we'll see here is the user types, and you'll see there's the line cook and expediter. Now, the line cook user type can run independent, or it can run in conjunction with the expediter. However, the expediter cannot be run independent. It is dependent on a line cook setup, as a line cook device will send the orders when bumped to the expediter device. Then you'll have the display modes next. You'll see the checks view, consolidated view. So the checks view, you'll have it in one window, or you'll have the individual items under the consolidated view. So if we have it set to consolidated here, you'll see that within 20 seconds, if a similar item does come through, it'll consolidate or aggregate together into one item with an updated quantity. Next are your text sizes here. So you'll see you have the order type, order level info, and order details. And you also see the consolidated view. That will not be present if we set it to checks view here. But you can set them to medium, large, or huge. And you see it's grayed out since we do not have the consolidated view enabled there. And the auto range orders into prep tab when timed hold is within the defined minutes here. If you have a hold order that the hold time is within 10 minutes, it's going to reflect under the prep tab. You can have a future order where it shows up under the future tab. And then once that hold time reaches or is under 10 minutes, it's going to move to the prep tab. Then when that hold time expires, it will move over to the fire tab. And you'll see the valid range there of 10 to 999 minutes. And you can allow an order to be unbumped within a certain time period. And you'll see it's set to 30 minutes here, and max is 180. After that time has expired, you can no longer unbump an order. Then when you add new orders to an existing order, you can have it create a new window or add on to the existing window. So since it says yes, it will create a new order there. And then the show alert when timer exceeds, we have that set to yes. So when the orders are initially in the fire tab, they will be in blue. And once it exceeds the defined time here, it will be blinking red. So if you want to set up external printers, you do have to define a print server here. Now, if a print server was already defined for the store, it would reflect here. Or you can set it up initially by tapping on the box and selecting a device here. So you see, once I select the device, I'll have the option to add printers. So I'll have a preview printer, pickup printer, label printer, and a packing printer. And you'll see that the print entire packing ticket upon bump is grayed out because I do need to define a packing printer in order to enable that setting. So the preview will show the items within the order. The pickup printer will print out the individual items. The label printer will print labels for the items that are designated to have a label printout. And the packing printer will have the finalizing order with the entire ticket as well, so that the employee acting as the expediter can organize the orders to present. All right, and then you'll have your theme, which you can set from light to dark. So it's about preference there. And then your diagnostics show which devices are connected to the KDS at this point. So we're going to go back and I'm going to tap on the arrow to get back into the KDS screen. I'm going to go ahead and push some orders through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some orders that will reflect as a ready to fire order. One that will pop into the prep tab because it's going to be within that 10 minutes. And then a future order where the hold time is greater than that 10 minutes there. And I'll submit that now. So initially you saw that the tabs on top were fire and completed. Now that I have an order put through, that is a future order, and when that falls into prep, those two tabs are now present. So I have my items that are ready to fire. I'll have my prep, which has a hold time of less than 10 minutes, and a future, which is greater than 10 minutes here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the fire tab, and you'll see that I can tap on an individual item to bump them individually. And you'll also have an option to print or view the details if the item did have details set up for it. If I tap on the blue box here, you'll see I can print the check or I can print the items there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bump one item here. So I'm going to tap on the garlic fries and hit bump, and it clears it out. And you'll notice that the window is now blinking in red because it exceeded that 1 minute. I can now go to my completed and I can see that I did push through the garlic fries here. I can unbump after 30 minutes because that's what the setting was set to. That unbump button would disappear. And I'll go back to the prep tab. Once this hold clears, it'll move to the fire tab. And in the future, once the hold time is under 10 minutes, it will move to the prep. And then when the time expires, we'll move to the fire. And then I can bump the order here, and then the orders will move through as the time passes. And that's about it, Jerry. I'll go ahead and hand it back to you.
All right, that was Rodney from our product support team, product training team. Now let's look at why it matters. Total cost of ownership on a KDS is far less than a printer. Initial cost, yeah, initial cost is more than a printer, but the total cost of ownership over the life of the system, that's what you have to sell. It's not the initial pain, it's the long-term effects of having this system that make it very, very valuable. There's no paper and ribbons to buy. Repair costs are dramatically less on a kitchen display than it is on a printer. There's no moving parts. Somebody's not going to pour liquid into a terminal or a KDS like they would the printers. So printers are far more susceptible to damage, and they have to have the repair cost of those. Then there's the speed of service. The questions that one of the questions in the chat was about printing, the time it takes to print versus the time it takes to display. Well, obviously, display is instant. It pops up instantly. The printer, though, takes a few seconds to print, and you don't really have to put a stopwatch on it. You have the concept from the restaurant owner. They understand that it takes a certain number of seconds for that print job to work. And yeah, it does depend on what items are in the queue as to how long it's going to take. Even if it's 10 or 15 seconds to print the entire order, it's always going to be slower than a KDS. And you start looking at the kitchen as a single point of failure. If you improve the kitchen, then you're going to improve the restaurant. So if you can find a way to save 10 seconds, 20 seconds per order, all of a sudden you start adding that up. 10 seconds, you save that on 6 orders, you've just saved a minute. A minute adds up, and it does affect the operation as a whole. So that's why it matters with regard to speed of service. Because seconds matter. Printers take seconds to print, KDSs are instant, and overall, the kitchen flow is improved with regard to an expediter screen. Now, you can have printers associated with an expediter, and that's a valid point that you might want to have them consider. That way, they can have a printed paper to put on the tray to take out to the table so that the food runner, can look at the ticket and not have to do a food auction. They can know seat 1 gets this plate, seat 2 gets this plate. They do that off of the printed ticket that goes out. Use the expediter to then create and tray the food, take the ticket, put it on the tray. That's for the food runner. That's more efficient and allows it to run much better. KDS installs are also much cleaner. There's no Ethernet cables to run. That means you have the ability to move and add these things without a lot of work. You don't have to call an electrician out to run Ethernet cable. It's a matter of plugging them in and they work. You have the Wi-Fi for the iPad. You have 2 power cords, 2, that's all you need. 1 for the monitor and 1 for the iPad. And then you put that anywhere. Anywhere you have a 2-prong outlet. Easy, easy. This is also better for the customer and you as the referring partner, as the selling partner. This is better for you. There's less downtime. You're not going to get a call about a printer jam. You're not going to get a call about paper jam. You're not going to get a call because the printer's out of ink or out of paper. You're not going to get those calls. Therefore, there are fewer support calls with a KDS than there are a printer. Overall, it's just a smoother operation with a KDS. All right, any other questions? Any questions in the chat that I've missed?
So Doug was actually looking to see if we could change the KDS name. And yeah, you can just go to the device, that KDS station, and change the name on it to whatever you'd like it to be. There is a character limitation there, but yeah, you can change to whatever you like, custom there. And then we have one for Doug here that says, does the assigned print from the KDS when Cook hit print and the print out of paper does show on the KDS? So there is a print queue for the KDS. So if you do run out of paper or something like this, it will hold for a short amount of time, but that queue does expire. So, you know, it does, it you know, keeps up with what's going on. That way you're not putting paper in it and then having a whole day's worth of tickets come out. But there is a print queue there for the KDSs that does function. So, you know, if you do run out of paper, it will go to a print queue. Jerry, I think that's the majority of the questions there that we got.
Well, Doug was spot on with the way to sell a KDS versus a printer, and that is speed of service. That is a big deal, and that needs to be something that is discussed with the restaurant owner. The opposite side of that is that there's going to be a higher initial investment. You need to be prepared for that so that when the time comes, there's no sticker shock. You need to sell the efficiency, the speed of service, and how this is going to positively affect the restaurant. And what's going to end up happening is that restaurant owner is going to want to put more KDS in his restaurant than he will printers. Most people try to get away cheap with 2 printers at most. And sometimes they use that double ply paper. That drives me nuts. That doesn't save anything. Put an extra KDS in there. Put KDS in there instead of printers. And what you're going to find is that their operation speeds up. You have less problems on the long run, and the total cost of ownership does go down.